but neither of you guys have anything. I mean, which is fine. I just want to make sure.
I don't think so.
We're good. We're good. All right, live stream people, you are now with us. I think we're okay, unless we just want to shoot the shit for a little bit. Yeah, I think we're okay. You guys want to go then?
Yeah. I'm still trying to get this damn app open, but it won't open.
On the YouTube?
Yeah, I've got the thing pulled up, but it's through Facebook, but it's not. It won't go to the app.
We'll get it done. All right. Had a couple of topics, etc. So let's get started. Let me make sure I don't repeat myself on the music. You got to end the loop. No pun intended. All right, there we go. Everybody happy? We're good to go. All right, people, welcome in. This is the Bite Me Podcast, my favorite hour of the week. I can't speak for the other two guys sitting across me, but I think they have a good time, and we're going to start with that today. Caleb McCumber is across from me. Captain Caleb McCumber. Captain Scott Knoll is across from me. We'll get their updates on what's been happening around all the bodies of water up and down the coast, the Gulf Coast, in just a minute. But just the quick reminder, as always, because we get new listeners every week, to go ahead and join the Bite Me group page on Facebook. Easy to find and a lot of fun. A lot of questions and topics come from there. Don't forget to subscribe and listen to the podcast when you subscribe on iTunes or Spotify or wherever else you get your podcast, because it is always good, always fun. And these guys across from me are absolutely fantastic in terms of knowledge they share, and getting it done for you guys. So, all right, let's dig in. Let's make it a real fast-paced, fun hour. And I'm going to start. Look, we're going to get into maybe a flaw in some trout regulations. That came via a question on direct message from Facebook on the group page. That sixth sense that some fishermen seem to have. Why is that? Can you acquire it, etc.? Young fishermen need to be listening as well. We want you to do some things. If they don't do this, we're doomed, I tell you. And some technical stuff on fishing back lakes and best setups for casting into the wind, et cetera. But I wanted to start here because this is always a really fun time when we get together with our listeners from the Bite Me community. And so this topic came up on Easter. Easter Sunday was wild. We had a bunch of people over to the house. I had 33 people I was cooking for. Man, I had a bleep ton of food. It was a lot of fun. So every year we go to the Rockport area for a week around July 4th. It's my daughter's birthday, one of my son's birthdays, so we always make it a big deal. So they did one of those. You're bringing your boat, right, Dad? I said, yeah, I'm bringing my boat. Remember that time when blah 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 last year? So here was the story, and I said, you know what? I know Caleb and Scott have some, and our listeners who are commenting live on the YouTube stream. If you are with us on the YouTube stream, we really appreciate it. This podcast will be posted, and always encourage people to subscribe to the podcast and listen to it on the podcast, because that's how we pay the freight, so to speak, here. But if you are live with us, we're interested in your stories as well. We will post your comments on all the topics today. So anyway, Scott, we were talking about going down to Rockport for July 4th. So last year, I dragged my boat down there, my Warrior, and we were out fishing, and I saw some birds, and I had kind of brain lock. Birds down there don't mean the same thing as birds up here. Birds up here oftentimes mean trout. Birds down on the lower coast means what? It means gaff top. So I had my now two daughters-in-law with me. One of them hates fish, like hates anything seafood, doesn't eat it, doesn't like it, but she goes, I'll go fishing. We'll go fishing. We'll have a good time. So, and then my other daughter-in-law is up for just about anything on the water, and was having a good time, but has never really fished that much. So we get into I said, look, we just leave the area right there at Salt Lake we're staying, and we leave the area immediately. We get into Copano Bay, and there's a massive birds working, like just a mass of birds. And I had that brain lock. I'm thinking, hey man, maybe we'll catch a couple trout here, get the day off to a good start. Everybody's happy, etc. Well, my daughter-in-law that hates anything seafood related, she immediately hooks up, and I'm like excited. Then I realized, oh crap, that's a gaff top. And then everything came together. My other daughter-in-law then immediately hooks him to a gaff top, and I'm holding my line in the water. Lo and behold, I hook into a gaff top, and I'm trying to shake it off because the one who hates seafood gave it to her husband, and she's standing on the edge of the boat. Like, she freaked out, like, you know what? I don't want to do this after all. So she's standing on the edge of the boat like a balance beam, like an Olympian, because she doesn't want to jump in the water because that's where the fish are, and she doesn't want to be where the fish is coming in. And so then my other daughter-in-law is like, nope, this is too much. I can't do it, and hands me the rod. So I've got 2 rods, and I look like a conductor in front of an orchestra because I'm still trying to shake off my first gaff top. The other gaff top my son's bringing in, we get 3 gaff top in the boat at the same time. One immediately bounces and flops right at the feet of my oldest daughter-in-law, and she like comes this close to jumping in the water, and she just starts scooting down the edge of the boat. Fortunately, that Warrior has that big wide beam or whatever, and so she's scooting over next to me. So she's standing behind me. I've got 2 rods going like this, like a conductor. The other one's flopping around on the boat. All of a sudden, I shake one of them off. I bring the other one in, take a picture with her or whatever, and the oldest daughter-in-law, we're 10 minutes into the trip, says, well, that was fun.
We're done now.
We're done now. Thank you very much, John. But that's that. It's funny when you're on the water, things that make you laugh. That was one that, our family still laughs about a lot. And there's a million other things that happen, over the course of time. But there are people, we sometimes take this too serious, Scott. It's like, oh, we're on a mission. We have to catch fish. We have to be serious. We have to be able to take pictures and show everybody what we caught. And we're angry if we don't get in on them or whatever. Man, those are great reminders. Just laugh. I mean, just have a good. The reason we all got into fishing is to have a good time and take family out like I did last year, etc. But I was curious what you guys, either instances, events, or people that kind of remind you guys, Scott. I'll start with you, of just like, look, this is supposed to be fun, man. And they still laugh about it. She actually had stayed out there the whole time, and she's looking forward to going again. We'll see how that goes.
Oh man, there's so many things that happen on guided trips. It's just, people falling in the water, there's a million different stories on all that. But one of my favorites is old friend of mine. I've mentioned him on here before, Wrong Way Steve. If he pull up to an intersection, you're supposed to go left, he's gonna go right. That's just wrong way. And we're out there at Mud Island where Blind Cut is, and we just pulled up. We were in his boat and pulled up there on the edge, and there's a little sandbar, along the edge of that's only like 6 or 8 inches deep. And he pressed the bow up on there, shut it off. Everything's all good. 3 or 4 of us were all bailing out to go wade fishing. Steve smoked all the time, so Steve's still smoking a cigarette. He's standing by the back of the boat. We all walk to the front of the boat, step out, spread out, start wading. That was my hardcore wading days. I mean, I was out of the boat within seconds. Then all of a sudden I hear this splash, and I look back, and Steve has stepped off the back of the boat to go wading. And it's about, I don't know, 10, 12 feet deep. And all we could see was a cigarette, his hand, and his hat. His hat was floating, and he was one arm swimming, and he never got the cigarette wet, though. He managed to get back into the boat, and he pulled it off.
Oh, the thing about fishing with Caleb is you instigate this stuff. You try to get people angry. You talk trash to your own customers.
I encourage it. That's what we're out there for, a good time. And my good time is
exactly
just a very good time.
Yeah. I had a guy pee in his waders once on me. Well, not on me, on himself. So we were out waiting, and he had fished a little bit, but he had his waders on, and all of a sudden I hear him. He wasn't too far from me, and he goes, "God dog it, I forgot." I said, "What do you mean you forgot?" He goes, "I just peed all down my leg." I was like, "What are you doing? You have to take your waders off to go to the bathroom." And he's like, "Yeah, I was in the water and figured I could just go." So
I had a girl pee in her waiter, or she was wearing her boyfriend's waders. She peed in his waders and then sat there and told him that she did it while they were fishing together.
That wasn't Delaney, was it?
No. No.
So Caleb,
never let
what
Delaney
jumps
wear his waders.
what jumps into your mind, because it is fun fishing with you, and we often give you a hard time, but you bring the party with you. What jumps out first thing that jumps in your mind when you talk about, look, we got to have fun out here?
Man, how many explicatives are allowed to be in a single story?
Or expletives, either way.
Explicatives.
Explicatives. It works for me. Everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Man, I was guiding a group for a tournament over in Galveston, and we were drifting over one of those deep reefs out there. And you could see trout all in the water. They'd come up and flash at a lure, but they would never commit and hook up to it, right? And so I'm doing my thing just like whenever I was with Scott, and we couldn't get those fish to eat. I'm going through everything in my head, and finally I come up with a plan. And back then I was running a I can't remember if I was in my boat or their boat, but both of our boats, they were the long V's with the about 10-inch wide gunnels, and then they came to a V at the front. And I'm used to cats to go in a straight line. I go to the back and I sit there and I diddle around, and I finally get like the perfect lure tied up for the job. It was like a popping cork with this and that. It took me 10 minutes to put it all together. And I stood up. I said, "Y'all need to sit down, pay attention, watch what the pros do, because I'm about to show you boys something." And I jump on that gunnel and I go to walking down it. Well, that damn thing V's instead of go straight. And about the time I told him watch a pro go to work, I walked right the hell off the side of the boat.
Oh my God.
It's kind of,
and then you caught yourself and said, "Yeah, I meant to be in here. I was going wade fishing."
Yeah,
there
was no plan. We were in like 12 feet of water. There was no plan at all, man. I told him watch the pros, then walked right out the side of the boat.
Well, you are a pro. I mean, technically you weren't wrong. Technically you were not wrong about that. But it was fun. I mean, because they we're looking forward to it. We're going down for a week around there, and it's always a good time. I mean, we do take it serious, and we, a lot of us enjoy taking it serious. But just being able to see some things that you've never seen before, to be able to have some laughs, that's what it's about. I was just reminded about it this past weekend, and I thought that was pretty cool. Anything else, Scott? You look like
I'll tell.
Yeah,
one.
you're thinking about something.
I got man. I mean, my mind's rolling. We could do this for an hour, but I'll tell one on one of our listeners.
Oh, good. We like that.
Oh, DJ, he's up there in New York. He can't get to me, so we're over in Louisiana and we're fly fishing. He's a great fly fisherman, him and his buddy John. And there's this massive, one of those big black drum is just rolling around in the shallows, just tailing and back out and all that. We call him the drum whisperer because he can catch one without even trying on the fly. And so he throws his fly over there in front of it. He doesn't really want to catch another one, big old ugly things. He's looking for redfish, but we didn't see any. So he gets it. Sure enough, it hooks up. And this is the biggest one that I've ever had in my boat. I mean, by a long shot. I mean,
wow.
When we finally got it in, I put it on my 60-pound boga, and it pushed it almost to the bottom. I mean, it was bouncing like 52 to 54 pounds, somewhere in there.
Okay, say that again. You cut out just for a second. It was what?
It was bouncing around on the boga between 52, 54 pounds, somewhere in that range. I mean, it was a big one. So I tell him, we need a picture of this. He goes, "I'm not taking a picture with that big ugly thing." Nope. I said, "Oh man, come on. Yeah, this biggest one I've ever seen. We got to get a picture of this." All right. After a few minutes of this. So I've got it on the boga in the water. I said, "All right, I'm going to lift it up." I got him sitting on my casting platform, the little stool in the front. He's sitting down. And I said, "Let me just swing it into the boat. I'll flip it up there. We'll land it on your lap. it's so big, it's hard to hold.
Yeah.
Get it lined up. John, you get ready to take a picture. I'll step back and I'll take a picture. We'll get this done real quick and we'll slide it back in the water. No problem. Okay, we're going to do this. We got the whole plan. I swing that sucker up there. It lands in his lap. I'm backing up to take a picture. And I hear this splat. And this thing has taken a gigantic poop. And it is on his shoe. It looked like a German Shepherd had gone off.
Oh.
And if you ever smell Pelican Island and all the bird, smell just like pelicans.
Well, that couldn't have made you happy either.
Oh my God, it was nasty. Funny as hell that we all three of us laughing so hard. And John and DJ hardly ever smiles when you take his picture with a big fish. I've taken his picture with 30-pound redfish, and he doesn't smile much. And I got this great picture of him with his head thrown back with his gigantic laugh going on, and one of the best pictures I've ever had of him. It's got the big old black drum laying across his lap with poop.
Well, that makes it even better.
Yeah, we had to make him take his shoes off for the ride back to the house. Well, I'm over there, all my customers just riding the truck with me. He got in the back seat. Me and John are sitting in the front seat, and we looked at each other and said, "Man, what is it? Oh my God, that stinks! You got to take your shoes off." Yeah, all right. And he takes his shoes off. He gets back in. It had gotten on his pants too. So we ended up making him take his pants off. And he rode in the back seat. And the whole way back, he's retired law enforcement as well. And John's in the DA's office up there. And DJ's in the back seat. Don't you dare speed. Don't you dare get pulled off.
Take your time.
He's sitting in the back seat in his underwear. That's going to be hard to explain. But we got back. Threw all his stuff in the washer, washed it a couple of times. It was all right.
I'll tell you what, you keep triggering thoughts here. I don't know about you, Caleb, but I did think one time I could say it was someone else, but it was me. I used to go wading and just take my shorts or whatever off and just, in my underwear, put my waders on. Well, I mean, this was an innocent enough thing. I just left my waders on the whole day, but it was really, really getting hot. I lost my pants somewhere. I guess they fell off the boat. And so I got back in the boat, dropped my waders to get my pants or shorts or whatever back on, and they were gone. But that was no harm, no foul. But what Scott said reminded me about taking the shoes off. Go ahead, Caleb.
Down in Baffin, there's these anybody that weighs down there knows there's these like quicksand holes. It's like there used to be a telephone pole parked there or stuck there, whatever, buried there. I don't know what you do to a telephone pole. There's a telephone pole on the ground. And you can be walking along and it's nice and firm, and you step in one of these, there's just like no bottom in it. And I've never found the bottom of the actual hole either. And I'm fishing up down there. I kind of shuffle my feet and I'll find them and work my way around them. And I had this little bitty short Asian dude fishing with me. And it's February, it's cold, and he puts both feet in one and just disappears into it. And I looked over, I was like, oh man, that sucks. And so I kind of keep fishing. And about 10 minutes later, I turn around and look back at my boat, and it looks like there's pirate flags all over my burn bar. And he is butt naked with all of his clothes tied to the burn bar, flapping in the wind.
Yeah.
I wish we had Pat Gardner on here right now. He had one of his customers. His customers of both of ours was a customer I got from Pat. I saw him today over at Anglers Anonymous, and Pat had told me one of his customers got hit by a stingray, and that's all I knew of it because Pat calls me and I don't call him back. I've been a pretty bad friend for about the past 2 weeks, and but I knew that part of the story. Well, Dee was up there at Anglers, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I got hit by a stingray with Pat last weekend." And I'm like, oh, I knew about that. And so he goes to telling me the story. And we've always talked about Pat's always kind of like level and chill and doesn't get real excited about too much. And so the story goes, Dee's walking along and something hits him in the foot. And he looks at Pat and says, something just happened. And Pat said, well, what do you think it was? And Dee said, man, I think a crab bit me. And I was like, well, it wasn't that bad, huh? And he's like, man, I looked at Pat and I was like, I think a crab just bit me. And Pat said, all right. And we kept fishing. And then he looked over at Pat and I said, man, it's starting to hurt pretty bad right now. And Pat said, oh, you think you're good for like 10 or 15 more casts? and And so, and then, Dee Dee over the trooper is like, yeah, we got 10 or 15 more in us. And so, and knowing Pat 10 or 15. So 2 hours later, Dee Dee,
Oh
I mean,
my
I'm
gosh.
not saying it was, I'm just saying, I know Pat and it probably was. Dee Dee looks at him like, man, this is getting terrible. And Pat goes, all right, man, well, I'm going to get the boat, but the reefer waiting to is right up there. You should probably keep on walking up there and give that fish that a little bit. And so they got back in the boat, and the thing had punctured through his leg, through his tendon, his Achilles, or whatever. And Pat was like, "Oh man, yeah, that's pretty bad."
That's gonna leave a mark.
I'm sitting there listening to the story, and I'm like, "There's only 2 people on the planet I know that would go through this series of these series of actions, and it's Pat and Dee Dee." What happened? What are you, Forrest Gump? Jumped up and bit me. He got hit in the freaking Achilles by a stingray. Like, man, I think a crab pinched me.
Dude, what a man.
By the
way, what a man, because that is no joke.
I want to know what you're doing out there to make sure where you can't feel your feet.
No kidding. That's wild. All right, we'll get into some topics here, but I thought that was a good way to get into it this week. And it's funny, Scott, that you said you call what's his name from New Jersey, JT, JD, DJ,
DJ.
Shout out to DJ, because it's funny you called him the Black Drum Whisperer or whatever, because I had a question about that sixth sense that we've talked about. Patrick has that sixth sense, and I'm sure you'll attest to that, Caleb. Like they just know when and where and why and how, and they can't even explain it to themselves. Like that old saying, he's forgotten more, or they've forgotten more than most of us will know. So there is that sixth sense. And Caleb, I'm gonna start with you, because we've all been out on the water, and you just feel it. Like I've done it a couple of times with some buddies. I said, it's about to turn on, boys. I mean, it's about to turn on, and boom, it sure does when you find the right thing. But here's the thing about the sixth sense, and I know Scott has some thoughts on this, but I want to start with you, Caleb. That's not necessarily something that's innate. What it is it's stuff that you don't even know. You've gone to, it's time on the water. Like you've gotten to this particular place at this particular time for a reason. You just do it, innately, immediately. But there people have talked about he has a sixth sense. To me, the answer is more time on the water, more experiences in different areas of the water, and all of a sudden you're going to realize the same thing, right?
I'm gonna answer your question with a question, John. We're gonna get a little cerebral in here.
Hit me.
If this is something that I don't even know I know, how am I supposed to tell people about what I know?
Because you just do it like you do it instinctively, but there are so many things going on in your head that you don't even realize that you're thinking of. You know what I mean? It's just like an instinct.
Who's on first?
My instinct was to be a smartass in that situation. Oh man, what is it? There is kind of a little thing where, the hair on the back of your neck doesn't literally stand up, but you just start kind of getting the vibe. But I think it's one of those things. As a guide, after you've done it a good while, you see stuff out of the corners of your eyes. You don't really know you're seeing it, but you kind of go, "Oh God, what was that?" And you look over, and your customer's doing something awful, or their bait's rigged upside down. There's just something going on. And I think that that you start seeing the bait start acting differently, and you start seeing maybe that tide line forming, and you see those kind of things. Really, the number one thing is whenever out of the corner of my eye, I see Pat hook up about 6 times, and I know eventually I'm going to get a bite too.
It has to happen.
Instinctually, I go to that. But yeah, it's any experienced guy, Scott, any guide, they can remember a time when they were a young man and they pull up in a drain with whoever taught them, and the guy that they're with says, "Man, there's bait everywhere in here," and we kind of looked around like, "What are you talking?" No, I don't see anything. And then pretty soon you start seeing it, and it's the point now when a shad flickers 20 yards away from me, I swear I can hear it hit the water. Like you just get tuned into it, and I think that is part of the the time on the water. It's the what's the who's the dog when you ring the bell their mouth starts watering?
Pavlov's dog.
Pavlov's dog. That's I think that's what it is you start associating all those little stimuli with something good, and you quit noticing the stimuli. You're not staring at it, looking for it, waiting for it, because you've become part of that environment, and that starts happening, and then the little bells and whistles start going off in your head. Yeah, no, there you go. That's what
you know what else that is, Caleb? You know what else that is, Caleb? That's you don't even know what you know.
I didn't even know I knew that.
Exactly. Scott, you and I have had this conversation a lot over the years. Like you just know, but it's not just you just know, it's the accumulation of time on the water, it's the accumulation of knowledge, and the Pavlovian effect, as Caleb talked about, where like, oh wow, I just saw this different kind of ripple on the shoreline. I bet you that's a redfish, or whatever. But you have real good perspective on this, because I know that because you and I have had this discussion before.
As a young cop, I got through a particularly rough little scrape, and one of the older cops said, you did good. I said, man, something in my gut just told me, watch out. And he said, always trust your gut. It's kept you alive this long. Yeah. And, so I tend to trust my gut on everything. And in fishing, that's kind of what it is. It's just an accumulation of all the things that you've seen and experienced over a long, long time on the water and in the woods, whatever you're doing. And you just know what's fixing to happen next. You just, based on all of those other experiences all combined, it's somewhere back there in the subconscious. You don't even realize you're doing it. And you get that feeling that things are right. This spot, this, things are fixing to happen. But I notice that when I've been out on the water a lot, and this is something again that I noticed when I was a police officer. When I worked in the office, I worked homicide, and I'd be stuck in the office for 2 weeks working on a case, just going out, seeing witnesses and doing stuff. I wasn't outside in nature. I wasn't doing my thing out in the woods or on the water. And I would lose that sense, that feeling. But if I spent 2 or 3 days on the water, I'd get back into the rhythm of it and start feeling it again. There's just, I don't know if it's the moon phase, the feeding periods that we always talk about based off of the moon being overhead, underfoot, or on the horizons, the prime feeding times in the majors and minors. But I can feel, if I've been outside a lot, I've been out in the woods hunting for days, or if I've been on the water every day, all one after another, I get to a point where I can feel that major and minor. It sounds weird.
No, I get it.
I just start feeling it, and I know things are getting right. And the weirdest part, and I know Caleb's felt this because we've talked about it, where you're in a really good bite and things are going off and everything's good, and you're thinking, better get it now because it's fixing to be over. I can't explain it. Don't know why. I mean, as you're catching the fish, it feels like you're going to be catching fish for the next 3 hours. Anybody who just comes into it. But if you've done it, all of a sudden you're just like, uh-oh, it's over. Yeah. And sure enough, it's over. And it's nothing you did. It's nothing that, a boat didn't come by and spook them or anything. It just has a different feel about it. There's a lot of times I'm pulling along there and I just have this, it's dead. The water's dead. The birds are sitting back. They're way back in the bushes. Everything just feels dead. And all of a sudden you notice the birds start creeping up to the edges. All the white birds get out of the bushes and they start working their way out to the edge to start hunting. Or you look out on a flat and all of a sudden this flat that was empty has now got 15 or 20 egrets standing on it and they're wading around. So it's a feeling, but it's also a feeling along with all that knowledge and experience.
Yeah. Go ahead, Caleb.
When birds start getting in the air, if I leave the harbor and the birds are all sitting around, I get in the bay and I don't see anything in the air. It kind of tells me it's probably a little bit dead right now. But then they start flying around and hunting and looking. That'll tell me that something's about to happen. Scott, you ever feel like that good barometer change, knowing that they're about to eat pretty good?
The barometer
just
has
gonna say the
like
same thing.
almost no effect on me. I mean,
oh, get out of here! Get
Uh,
out of here! I will say this: Scott reminded me of a couple of times. You know, I've been on some fish real good, and one time in particular, I was with both my sons, which is always good when both of them can go, and we were catching some trout, and it was hot and heavy. I mean, it was good trout, and almost every cast, as people like to say. And then I just looked around and I said, I think that's it, guys. And they're like, they had just caught fish, not even 5 minutes earlier. I'm like, I think that's it, guys. Let's just hang around, see if anything pops back up, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, no, man. So they keep casting and casting and casting and casting. Nothing. Like nothing. I mean, and I'm not you guys. I'm not even pretending to be you guys, but I've been on the water a lot. And I'm like, I just sensed right there, Caleb, that's it. And it was it. And I can't tell you why,
I've been on really good bites before, and a dude in a Freedom come trolling up behind me, beating the hell out of everything in sight. And I knew we better go ahead and get him right now.
Yeah.
So
What'd that guy look like?
Yeah, Scott says I felt that feeling before. That I've lived it. I have, really have.
Does it have a floppy hat with an A&M logo on it?
It was and the brim was exceptionally stiff.
It had that stiff and quick on it. Works every time. Works every single time. All right, so here's a real good one. Here's a real good topic. I love when our studio audience participates. Actually, this was via direct message, but let me read you guys the question. Scott, I'm going to start with you. Hey, John, hope you had a wonderful Easter. Here's what I'm thinking. It happened to me, and I'd like some opinions on it, if I did the right thing or not. Last weekend, I caught a 27.5-inch, 6-pound East Matagorda trout. And once I landed her, I realized she swallowed my lure and was bleeding pretty bad. He actually sent me a picture, and she was. Rather than tear her all up, I decided to cut my line and wish the best for her. Given she lives in saltwater, under the mindset that the water will take care of her, it was easier to replace the lure than the fish, is what I was thinking. Did I do the right thing? Obviously, the regulations are such in East Matagorda, you can't keep anything over 25. I'm sure others have experienced this as well. I got mixed answers from family and friends. So, Scott, this is a tough one, but I think I know your answer. Go ahead.
Probably did the right thing. You got to be there to get a feel for what that fish is, looking like, how it's acting. Is it acting half dead? If it is, it's probably not going to make it. But if it's still frisky, and depends on where that hook is, he didn't really explain why it was bleeding so much. Sometimes fish gets hooked in the tongue, it'll bleed like crazy, but it's really not hurt that bad. Redfish in particular will. Bleeding isn't necessarily an indication, of the fish going down. The location of the hooks is a lot more important. I mean, if it was in the gills and you've ripped some gills loose, and that's what the bleeding is from, then the chances are real good that it's not going to make it. If it's somewhere in the mouth,
keep it, Scott. If you keep it, Scott,
you can't keep it. I mean, legally you can't keep that fish. So the whole discussion's kind of a moot point at that. Once it reaches that upper limit. But if you were just talking about somebody in Galveston that could keep that fish, that one there would be a toss up. I would have to be there and look at the fish, but chances are really good. They're tougher than we think they are, and chances are pretty good that fish made it.
I don't think it's a bad idea. I've had actual parks and wildlife people tell me that if they're hook deep, that you can cut the line and they have a decent chance to make it. Those lures will kind of rust out pretty quick in that salt water. I've cleaned redfish that had a couple of jig heads in their bellies, or at least hooks, right? It's what's Freddie Fender say? A little bit is better than nada. You know, that's the chance that they have to survive at that point, right?
Well, yeah, the way I would explain it to somebody too is, well, if you do it in ice chest, what chance does it have of surviving?
Yeah, exactly.
0. So
well,
at least it had a
does
chance.
lead
It swam off,
it,
so
it
it's
did,
got a shot.
presumably. It did lead me to think something though. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about, if we were king of the world of fishing, what would we do? And people can go back and listen to that podcast. I think it was 2 weeks ago. But it did get me thinking about maybe something once this thing expires. Once the 3 fish limit expires, which is coming up pretty soon, and it's got in September.
August 23, I think.
August.
Is it August?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So once this thing expires, how do you guys feel about one tag, like a redfish, one tag for the boat, per whatever, or however you want to do it, for a trout over 25?
I'm mixed about it, but it wouldn't hurt. I don't think it would really hurt anything in the overall big scheme of things, as long as guides don't do what they do with the redfish tag, where they're shooting for, let's get that one fish over, every day. And I know a bunch of guides that are doing that now. If it was strictly used as a trophy tag, then yes. And so you'd have to make it, a way upper end. What they do on like tarpon, you're allowed to keep a tarpon over a certain length, but at that length, it's likely a state record. So, if you made that tag, not a 25-inch tag, but made it a 32-inch tag or whatever, set a really lofty goal, something that they're not going to catch every day. Like, the redfish tag, everybody can catch a redfish over 28 pretty much any day. I mean, it's a real possibility, but catching a over 30-inch trout, pretty slim. And the guys who do it are more likely to release them unless it's a state record.
Correct. Caleb?
I don't see what would hurt. Maybe popular opinion, maybe not. I'm fine with 3 fish. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm fine with no fish. I
think we're all fine with 3 fish. I like that. But in these instances, maybe even make it, like Scott said, Caleb, over 28 or 29 or something. You can tag one.
Yeah, make it a trophy fish. But there's a real disconnect on what a trophy fish is. That's one thing I learned early in my career is, people get in the boat and they say, I want to go catch a big one. Well, some people, a big one's 23. Some people, a big one's 33. It is what it is there. But the, keeping one over every day, what's the point really?
Yeah.
But I mean, at the same time, something's been driving me crazy, and it's kind of off topic, is that if I take you fishing and we come back and it's a guided trip, Scott could correct me on this, but I'm pretty sure we're allowed to have 3 fish in the boat, not 6. My limit does not get brought in.
Right.
And I'm gonna tell you what, I'm sitting here looking at this and that and this and that and on Facebook, and most of the time all the customers are gonna be in that picture.
Yeah.
And there's an extra limit
3 trout
in there. Like that's not following the rules, boys.
That's a great point. And I hadn't even noticed that or thought about it, but I've noticed it. Like you see, you can count heads,
Well, you remember when I said you do this long enough, you see something out of the corner of your eye and goes, oh. Well, when you're using the restroom, staring straight at it on your phone, you really see it.
Okay.
I replied to you on Facebook. Just know that's probably what was happening when I did it.
Yeah, you're only doing it with one hand.
You only feel so special if I like your comment.
Yeah. I think. Do we all agree that? And boy, this will be a hot button topic on the group page. But do we all agree it should be extended, Scott? The current limits?
No doubt. We're not there yet. It's not recovered. I don't know how long that will take, but we're not anywhere close. And keeping it to 3, I think extending the 3 on up the coast. Go ahead and make the whole state 3. it doesn't hurt anything, man. 3
No.
trout, that's plenty of fish. Yeah.
Caleb?
I've already said 2 things that irritate people. I'm going to abstain from
It's all right.
trifecta.
Yeah. Come on,
That's
go
not
for
like
the trifecta. Go for the trifecta. Who are you and what did you do with Caleb?
I mean, like I said before, I'm good with it now. I know there's people that drive from San Antonio and want to take fish home and everything. It's just there's other folks that abuse the system, and that's where you end up between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, no question. All right, here's a question, and I think it's a real good one for both of you guys who have been out in the back lakes and the bayous, etc., a lot lately. So the question is, what to do? Caleb, you kind of talked about this a little bit. What to do when there are no real signs in a back lake or drain? How far back do you go? When would you bag it and try another one, or would you do it before even casting? So this is, we've all been there. It's like, oh, let's go to that back lake. Let's go down whatever and see if we can find some redfish. And then you get back there and you're like, boy, that was a long and winding road for a whole lot of nothing. What is your strategy there, Caleb? I'll start with you.
Man, at least you got to see something cool. There's always something to look at when you're running a back lake.
This is true.
And
you get to make a lot of turns.
Man, I'll kind of, a lot of the lakes that I fish all up and down the coast, it'll be like one lake, then a drain, then one lake, then a drain, and then one lake. Some of them go way back up. Some of them don't. I'll usually check those first 2 or 3, see what's going on with them, drift across the middle of them, throw a topwater, some sort of locating lure. If I don't get anything, I might go to the next one. And by the time I get to the third one, if I'm not finding bait or fish, I'll usually kind of roll on and go do something else. To be honest, I'm not gonna sit there and beat on it and grind on it whenever there's something else to go look at or something else to check, right? But more often than not, the real situation is where you're at and you're not seeing anything. It's just the not the right time of the day, or give it a minute to do what it's supposed to. I very rarely have I found where there's no fish in one lake and a bunch of fish in the next one. There may be less in one and more in the next one, but if there's just nothing going on, usually it's just time of day, or maybe you ran in there and threw a big wake and just shut everything down, and you punted yourself to a 30-minute timeout. Ashworth and I fished the other day, and it was a lake I knew pretty well, and he'd been fishing it for a couple of years, but I've been fishing it a long stinking time. And I stopped about 100 yards before it in the little canal going in it.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped and I putted all the way to it. And then I got on the very opposite side of where I wanted to fish, where I go get the wind with me and just putted. It took me 30 minutes to do it. But if I didn't do that, I was going to go shut it down for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And so these are the things to really think about is, or should they be in here? If they should be in here and nothing's happening, then maybe, give it a minute or something.
It's an interesting point because a lot of people, including myself, like to be on plane, even if it's just 20 miles an hour, to be able to get back there and not have to jack with the trolling motor and, tossing up mud and all that stuff. So I generally go in on plane. So I'm gonna try what you just said next time I go to a couple that I like back there because it makes a lot of sense. Put it that way.
Many a times I've been in a lake fishing schools with birds on top of them, just having a great morning, and 2 or 3 boats coming in on plane, and it's done. Might as well go somewhere else. And it's a lot why I changed boats, because now I can go somewhere else that they come in on plane there. Then there's going to be all kinds of fun happening. I have nothing to do with fishing. I'm just going to have a good time calling Scott and be like, you ain't gonna believe what the hell I just saw.
Yeah. And yet I've gone in on plane a lot and caught a lot of fish. So it's interesting how you read it.
It depends on the mood of the fish. It depends on how much they've been pressured. It depends on the depth of the lake. It depends on a lot of stuff. It does.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, you run in somewhere on plane, you might be okay, but let another couple of boats do it and see what happens around there.
Scott, what I wanted to ask you about on this was the other part of his question. And Caleb didn't talk about this, so it's all yours. How far back and when do you know to go how far? Because a lot of times that's what I'll do. I'll just start on the front end of the pond or the lake or whatever and just kind of gradually go further and further back if I'm not catching fish, or if I just think the weather or the tide has them, pushed up in there. What is your strategy on getting because a lot of times I'll see boats come in and they kind of do little circles or go to each side of the lake, kind of in the middle or the front of the lake. And I just caught fish at the back You know what I mean? So what are your thoughts there, Scott?
I'm always going as far back as I can get. That's part of the pole and skiff thing and kayaking, and it's just taught me that the fish are way back there. I mean, there are a lot of days that nobody else can get to them. There are places that's too muddy to wade and too shallow for most boats, and that's my gig, man. That's what I like to do. Redfish will surprise you. They'll be back there in 3 or 4 inches of water with their whole back out, eyeballs above the water. And those are my favorite fish. You know that they're feeding. That's the coolest thing about going back and finding those super shallow fish. They don't do that unless they're up there eating. If they're not eating, they'll stay shallow, but they're going to drop off into a foot and a half of water and have their backs covered and just kind of lay up. So if you catch them when they're prowling those shorelines, backing out and doing all that, damn good and well anything that hits near them, if it doesn't spook them, they're going to eat it. As far as figuring out which lakes, and it's so tough, because some lakes are really good, some lakes aren't. Some are traditionally good, and some are traditionally bad. Then there's others that kind of come and go. If I'm having a hard time locating my fish, I'm going to keep moving, keep trying some new ones. But when I'm exploring, and something I've mentioned on here way back, I don't know if I have any time recently, but if I'm poling and I'm messing around in an area I'm not real familiar with, as I'm poling up there to the opening, I'm going to feel the bottom with my push pole or with a paddle. And if it's a hard bottom and it's wiped clean and it's got that hard mud or even hard sand, that's a good lake. There's some good lake back there. If it's real soft, I mean, like mushy, soft, and silty, I don't even bother with that one. I'm not going back there. I don't know what the hydrology is, but some lakes get more flow than others. 2 lakes that look exactly alike. One of them gets flow, one of them doesn't. I don't know if it's from the way the wind sets up the majority of the time or just something different about the depth. But there's many lakes that I've been to where it's just soft bottom in the front, and there's just no tide movement back there. And you'll very rarely find anything back there except for gigantic mullet and those real soft bottom lakes. Now the lake itself can be soft bottom, but if the entrance isn't washed clean, that means it doesn't get much tidal movement, and I just pass those over.
Caleb, you answered one of the questions we got here on the live stream on my YouTube channel. But if you care to share with the class, because the question is a good one, should I even be in the marsh on the end of an outgoing tide / low tide?
Yeah, the key is if it still has water in it. This is very important.
Water's important.
I have been on both ends of this. I really like the end of an outgoing tide. I've also been there whenever the tide went out so far that there wasn't any water left. At that point, the answer is no, you shouldn't be there.
But you are for a while.
For a minute.
If you pick up your phone and start searching airboat, you probably shouldn't be there.
Yes.
And Captain Scott, just real quick before we move into another topic here, and then of course what would Scott do, what would Caleb do? Captain Scott, this is from Broken Coast Outdoors. Captain Scott, why can't kayak fishermen get any respect from people in boats? Boats will pull up on you 50 yards away and not think twice about it. Interesting that he used the 50 yards because I think we're here for for a lot of fishermen that listen to us. Thousands of listeners every week. Go ahead.
John said that his rule of thumb is about 50 yards to stick
That was me.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense. Like 50 yards.
Yeah.
How long is it to paddle 50 yards?
Yeah,
that's coming from John.
Thank you, Caleb. So Scott, why can't kayak
the people who
we're
are
here trying to get them respect?
The people who are doing that do that to everybody. They do it to a pole and skiff. They do it to a bunch of waders. They do it to anybody and everybody. It's just people that don't give a damn. People who are respecting other fishermen don't do it to a kayak. They don't do it to a wade fisherman. They don't do it to a pole and skiff. They don't do it to another boat that's anchored up. it's a mindset, that
Mhm.
I need to be there, or I'm fishing a tournament, you're not. I've had that discussion before. I've had that discussion with some guides before that think that since they're out on they're out there making money on a guided trip, that they can come right in on me. It's a mindset of certain people, and it's nothing to do so much with what kind of craft you're in or how you're fishing. If they're doing it to a kayak, they're going to do it to a wade fisherman. They're going to do it to anybody. I don't think it's necessarily targeting to kayakers, but I will tell you that kayakers do have a tendency, shall I say,
Here we go.
to park in the mouths of bayous that lead to a great amount of backwater. I don't know why, but I've seen, and boats do it too. I mean, everybody does it, and I've seen boats parked there, and you can't park at the mouth of a major bayou going into a big marsh and block off, 500 acres, 600 acres of water back there. That's the only way in and out. People are going to come by you. And if you really want to fish there, you just got to learn to take it and wave at them, be friendly. And I'd rather them come on by me on plane, honestly. If I were doing that, than slow down and putter. Go ahead and get it over with. Get on by and go on about your business. And there's times too that where they're parked, you can't slow down. Going into that marsh, I got to stay up on plane.
Yep.
And I'm as courteous as I can be, but if you're in the only entrance into a big marsh that other people want to go fish, you're just gonna have to suck it up and deal with the traffic, or maybe go find you another place that's a little quieter.
In the words of
Caleb,
George
do you have any
Strait,
thoughts on this? I think you probably would like to be on plane, if I had to guess, Caleb. But a lot of times when I try to go by a kayaker or whomever, a small boat on plane, I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh boy, they're going to get ticked off. They're going to get ticked off, even though I think I'm doing what's best for them.
in the words of George Strait, one of his most famous quotes was, "Go on, get your ass out of here." I said, "Get."
So you go on plane.
Yeah. Hey, I put out a YouTube video with a kayaker and asked him, and I'm going by that. They want you to get on past them, and a lot of the times, whenever I got to be so close to them that it should matter, they're in a spot that I probably shouldn't slow down anyway.
Right, that's what Scott was saying.
I had my pole and skip in kind of a narrow spot. I wasn't in a channel. I was just I had pulled into a spot where a lake narrows down, and I got blasted. I knew the guy. Texted him, "Hey man, pole and skips really hate big wakes." He says, "My bad, bro. I didn't see you." I was like, "Well, I'm about 12 foot tall over here and bright white, 15 yards away from you." And I personally had to do an eye test for my captain's license.
But that's just you.
That's just me. Apparently they were sticklers for me.
I didn't even know they did an eye test for a captain's license.
They do. We do.
Yeah.
I even passed the drug test.
You have to do a hearing test too. I don't know how he got by that.
What's that?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, what?
Do you hear the ring, sir? Yep, both of them.
That's pretty cool. That's of all the things, and I've always, kind of wondered about that. I didn't know they had the eye, and that's good.
It's way more than a driver's license or something. You gotta go get a physical, all kinds of stuff.
Well, that I kind of figured, but
I haven't had to do the rubber glove yet. I don't know if I'm not old enough. Scott, do you have to do the rubber glove?
No. Scott's last 4 or 5 little 4 or 5 captain's license upgrades, updates. It's been an adventure, man. It's been wild.
A little factoid: did you know that when Scott first got his captain's license, the Dead Sea was just still sick?
Yeah, I've heard that. It was a lot tougher back then because all they had was sailboats.
Yeah.
Says the guy who's older than me.
Oh, you say that. I'm like 3 months older than you or whatever it is. Get the hell out of here. All right. So we're going to get to another question here. I do want to remind everybody about the great stuff from Knock and Tail and Wade Wright. And that's BITEME20, the Bite Me 20 promo code. And it is knockandtaillures.com is the website. That's new. And you can purchase them right there. I was trading texts with Mike, who said he's getting all kinds of pictures with that new rogue bait that I've been throwing and liking from Knock and Tail. Then, of course, Wade Wright had Tim out on that fateful day that I didn't catch a lot of fish, but we had a blast. And we're going to go out again, and he's going to take care of you. That Bite Me, the Wade Wright belt is incredible. I used the belt on that trip. I do like the sling more often, just when I'm bopping around on some short waves. So you can go to coastalfishinggear.com, and it's Bite Me 20, BITEME20, and get that Bite Me combo for a great price. All right, so best setups and techniques casting into the wind. Scott, you've got decades on the water. You've got decades throwing in every which direction. Is there a particular setup that is more conducive for the weekday challenge, as Dean likes to say, or people who aren't on the water, but you want to throw out you have to throw out into the wind? Setups and techniques casting into the wind, Scott.
Spinning rod. That's the only way to go.
100%.
If you're going to be consistently casting into the wind, a spinning rod will
100%.
outdo a bait caster for most folks.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you're throwing a big topwater. If you're throwing something that's heavy, that's got some mass to it, that can cut the wind, you can kind of sidearm it and keep it low. Sometimes that helps. Throwing a top dog or something like that, it really doesn't matter. I'll spin around. A fish crashes, bait crashes behind me, wading with the back, wind at my back. I have no problems turning around and slinging that with a bait caster. But if I was going to have to pole along and sight cast into the wind, or be in a kayak and I know that I'm working my way into the wind all morning, I'm going to pick up the spinning rod if I'm throwing little soft plastics or anything lighter. And even without wind, if you're throwing like a DOA, the DOA shrimp like we like to throw, the spinning rod will throw a DOA shrimp a whole lot better than a bait caster will.
Part of this, Caleb, is interesting because I don't find myself casting into the wind a whole lot, because you can wade, you can use your power pole and get the right angles, or you can use your trolling motor or whatever. But there are just some instances where you that's where you need to be. That's where you need to go. Throwing into the wind, how do you handle that?
With a trolling motor into the wind?
No. Don't throw your trolling motor into the wind. Don't do that. If you're casting into the wind, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to keep up with our comments.
You caught him sleeping in class, is what you did.
Yeah, he was looking.
I was reading.
He was talking with his neighbors, as my teachers used to say.
Yeah, Russ and Buffy are using emotes a little too heavily and caught my attention because they're colorful. Man, I hate to sound like a badass or anything, but I cast a bait caster in the wind all day long. Well,
if it's a torpedo, I will. Like Scott said, if it's top water, maybe even some heavier baits.
Even my little plastic. Now it is a 1/4 ounce jig head, sometimes an 1/8. But I'll adjust the reel where it acts like I want it to, and then I kind of have this little sidearm underhand thing where I kind of shoot it under the wind more than lob it into the wind, and it does pretty well for me. I hate spinning reels that much that I'm not overly accurate with them is a problem, and a lot of my fishing.
Yeah, that's why
I have to be accurate, right? But I guess on the flip side of that, I don't have to be. What am I trying to say here? I'm pretty close to everything I cast at. I'm not making like long blind casts either, right? Now, a top water or something, you can go ahead and get it out there into the wind. But yeah, they're just. It's one of those things I didn't know I knew it, but there's just a way to cast into the wind where you stay under it and your lure actually go and then kind of rise and sit down versus fight it the whole way.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's what I try to do. I'm not going to say I haven't when I've absolutely had a gust that I need to get into throwing the spinning reel. But just that little flick of the wrist, that underhand flick of the wrist, low and fast, you can do. and put the heavier jig weight on there. I just wish Scott had eaten lunch today, because he's munching on
I'm
some
sorry,
crackers.
No, I'll give you a little inside, little peel the curtain back, as you like to say. I hate when the Pringles, it's Pringles, it's not crackers.
Oh.
And when your Pringles stack is in that tall can and you're down towards the bottom and you go to roll it, and
you
the whole
put your
stack
finger
rolls,
in there.
yeah, the whole stack rolls over sideways and it gets all jumbled up and messed up instead of being stacked neatly like they're supposed to be.
Now you got us all craving Pringles.
Yeah,
Pringles is a very underrated chip.
Man,
It's not as good as.
I've been outside working all day. I hadn't had a chance to eat.
I'm sure you have.
This is my chance.
Is this thing ready for its grand opening yet? Is the barndominium ready yet? Well, how close are we? He's just putting the AC in. So do we have a date?
Well, if there's some electricians out there that want to come over and run some wire with me for the next couple of days, that would be awesome. But
we can arrange that.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now, is roughing in electric. I've got all the plumbing done. AC's half done. My buddy came down, knocked out about half of it, and they need the electricity on before they can do the rest of it, really. So
have you reached that point yet? Because I've been complimenting you every time I get pictures and stuff like that. Like I am relatively handy. I've done some little projects, floors and decks, and I did an outdoor kitchen, but I ain't about to build a house, man. Have you reached that point where you said, yeah, maybe I should just get somebody else in here to do this part? Or are you just bound and determined?
No, I've done it before, so I'm doing it now. Yeah. It's just parts and pieces, man. That's keep plugging along.
That's what you say.
Figure it out.
All right. What would Scott do? What would Caleb do? I know I was looking at it yesterday. I looked at it again this morning. We might be catching a little bit of a break here, but I'm going to let the experts talk about it. And Scott, I will start with you while Caleb searches his apps, because Friday, Saturday, Sunday were, a little bit windy. It seems like a little bit windy on Friday. But what would you do today, this week, if you want to go catch yourself some fish, Scott?
I would make my plans. If I was a weekend guy, I would make my plans for Saturday, because Saturday's looking good. Good mid 70s, 4 or 5 miles an hour down here. I don't know what's showing up north, but southeast 4 to 5. This might be the time that the surf turns on. We're in that right period. Typically I like it from May a little more, but I've caught plenty of surf trout in April as well, when the weather gets right. And if we can catch a couple of days like that, which it's going to be pretty light leading up to it, and Friday, for some reason, it kind of bumps up a little bit. It might mess things up a little, but it's southeast, so it's not going to dirty it up like a southwest will. So I think I would be heading out there, working the beachfront a little bit and having a little fun out there. If you're going to stay up in the bays, wade fishing the shorelines, working the back lakes, everything else is kind of wide open at this point. Should be good.
Well, I'm going to be out early, Caleb, and off the water by 2. I'm judging the barbecue contest in Sargent Saturday afternoon, but Saturday morning doesn't look too bad. I mean, a little bit breezy overnight, but it gets real good. As he said, southeast, south. What are you looking at for Friday, Saturday? Sunday's going to be windy now, but at least, but what are you looking at, Caleb?
According to my app, Scott pretty well said everything. I'll probably go fish 3 or 4 hours on Saturday morning and putter down some shorelines here and there and try to pick a couple off. But
what's the surf been? Any surf reports from our neck of the woods, Caleb?
I saw, where did I see it the other day? Because we talked about the surf last weekend, and then I saw some fish caught somewhere. I haven't heard any big surf reports, but there's been a little bit of entertainment showing up from what I've seen.
Well, that's good.
A buddy of mine asked me about fishing report. He's coming down. Hadn't been down for a while, and he's coming down here. He listens all the time. But old Jimmy, and it's something I told him. I said, I would imagine it's pretty good. And he said, well, you hadn't heard? I said, no, things got real quiet.
That's even better.
when you're leading through, this springtime and winds are up and water's dirty and everybody's complaining about it and bitching about it, and then all of a sudden it gets real quiet when the weather starts getting a little bit better. That first week or two, there's not a whole lot of reports that come out, and it's usually some guys who figured it out, and then word starts leaking out later on. Yeah, we've been catching them for a couple of weeks now. And as quiet as it got, I got a funny feeling that things are kicking off in some places.
Well, good deal. Caleb, what's going on in your world that we can talk about here before we get out of here?
Man, it's all secret. It's all secret.
It's all secret.
All secret.
You're one of those guys.
We're making moves on the new project. It's getting closer and closer, and I'm about to be leaving to go to Louisiana, chase some tournaments, and do some things like that. So, and
you guys, we're talking about book a lot this time of year, but I'm sure the summer's going to get hot and heavy into the fall. Any parting shots, Scott?
I'm pretty well booked up with the days that I have open, leading on up into then summertime's going to hit and Tarpon will be ready.
Good deal. That is the Bite Me Podcast. Appreciate everybody who has joined us on the live stream. We will post this on Wednesday morning. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Catch them up. And you know what I'm going to say here. We will see you next time.
You're not going to play it twice?